Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Think Bitcoin podcast, where I talk to Bitcoiners about culture, art, philosophy, and living well. Please like, rate, and subscribe to the show. It is very much appreciated and very much helps expand the reach of the show. Today's guest is Walker. Walker is the creator and the host of the Bitcoin podcast, which I am sure you're all familiar with. He's also a fierce advocate for freedom technology. This is a pretty wide-ranging discussion. I'm not going to waste your time trying to summarize the whole thing here. So, no further ado, please enjoy this episode with Walker. All right, we are live. Walker, welcome to Think Bitcoin. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Stoked to be here.
So we were actually just nerding out a little bit before before we hit record, and always kind of weird trying to figure out when to hit the record. But I got to ask, dude, your lighting game on your podcast is so on point. Like, what are you doing there?
So it's actually like pretty simple. And I did nerd out on this a lot. Like the interesting thing about going, you get into Bitcoin, there's all these different rabbit holes, right? You get into Bitcoin podcasting, there are similarly a bunch of rabbit holes. One of those is like, how do you actually light something? Like how should you light your setup so that it looks like nice, but like you don't want it to look like too much like a newsroom, but you don't want it to look too unprofessional either. And there's, how do you strike a balance? And so I just like nerded out and I watched some like tutorials. Then like I was going back and forth like AI and just having it like, okay, here's like the kind of the dimensions of my room. Let me scope this out. Like what kind of light should I get? How strong do they need to be? Like where should I position them? Is this even necessary? What do I do to make myself look less flat against the background? There's a thing called a hair light. What does that even mean? And so, yeah, my setup is actually like, it's very inexpensive though. That's the other thing. I was like, this is, as we were talking before this, we have fiat jobs. So this is like I don't know, I hate the term side hustle because it feels so fiat. Like that feels like it's like such a fiat term that a side hustle is even necessary. So I don't view this as a side hustle. This is just a hobby that I really, really enjoy and am passionate about because it allows me to talk about Bitcoin with awesome people. But I have two, what do you call them, like softbox lights that were like $60 for both of them on Amazon. I've got one little key light right there. And then I've got this nice little sign behind me, which was specially custom made in some warehouse in China for like 60 or $80. And then another light from behind me that Carl and I used to use for content creation, which was like $20. So my whole lighting setup is actually pretty inexpensive. And yeah, it looks okay. I cannot say enough about neon signs.
It looks great.
Get yourself a neon sign, throw it up behind you. It gives you a little glow. It's perfect.
I had the jail cell aesthetic going for a while where I was just like, I mean, this is, I guess, episode 5, I guess. So
nice.
But I was just going blank walls, and so I was like, I got to put a bookshelf back here. I got to kind of just, give this some kind of aesthetic. But I'm jealous. Looks great. And just, I should say for the record, we're giving the people what they want, obviously, which is podcasts. Bitcoin podcasters interviewing Bitcoin podcasters. So this is
about
like
Bitcoin podcasting. Like
correct,
it's like multiple
it's like a
layers
treasury
of
company.
meta.
Yeah. We're like this is like a podcast treasury company that we're going to start here with like derivatives of Bitcoin podcasters. So
I love, we maybe if we just put the podcasts on chain, if we put them on the blockchain. Like, oh God, did you see? Sorry, I'm just going to diverge here, but did you see Lutnick the other day was like, we're going to put the GDP numbers on the blockchain because you're the crypto president, sir. So we'll put them on the blockchain. And I'm like, it sounds like your boomer uncle. It sounds like your boomer uncle explaining like, well, we'll just, it's like literally like, or like Zoolander, like the files are in the computer. Like we'll put the numbers on the blockchain. It's like what blockchain? Like which one are you using? Like, are you going to use open timestamps and hash those into the Bitcoin blockchain? Are you going to, somehow put them in that centralized shithole blockchain of Ethereum? Like, what are you going to do? But it's like, we didn't think past that. We just wanted to say, put them on the blockchain. It's like, God, you're like 5 years behind on just like the put it on the blockchain narrative anyway, dude. Like, give us the program.
It does sound very like 2017, I guess. It sounds very like just theatrically crypto adjacent, with like
tokenize everything.
Yeah, no actual substance under it at all. But yeah. I don't know. It's weird because Lutnick is kind of like allegedly a Bitcoin guy, right? I mean, he's like kind of allegedly
purportedly owns quite a bit of Bitcoin personally and through his various, corporate vehicles. So, I mean, he's certainly invested in Bitcoin's continued success, but yeah, I don't
I
know.
was unmoved by that announcement.
Yeah, I mean, he's also he's a big he's a very big beneficiary of the fiat system, right? Like,
Of course, yeah, that's
which
true.
is like, not his fault. It's the system that exists, but like, we should keep that in mind.
I guess another thing, this is entirely unrelated, but obviously we're keeping a little loose here. But it occurred to me one thing I wanted to ask you, and I think it's just worth this being public because I think it could benefit a lot of other people, a lot of parents out there. I have two young children. My understanding, Walker, is that your son, who I think is quite young, but my understanding is that his diet consists almost entirely of filet mignon. So if you could, if you could somehow explain to me and maybe to other parents how I can replicate that. Is your son just was he just born kind of like preternaturally based, or is this a regimen that you had him on? How did this work?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. To clarify, he does eat more than just filet mignon. Now, I think the first like solid food he had was just I forget if it was a bone in ribeye or if he had a like just a rib bone to gnaw on. And so he just like he liked meat right away. Carl and I are also very big meat eaters. Obviously, we are omnivorous. However, we are not fully carnivorous. And he is as well. Like he loves eating fruits and whatnot. It doesn't mind his vegetables either. So that's good. But yeah, he really likes meat. And I would say like if you just give him meat early on, especially if you give him something really tactile, like you don't need to cut it up into tiny little pieces. Like give them that big piece to chew on. Like they don't choke on the big stuff, right? They choke on the little stuff, the little round things specifically. So it's like give them just a big hunk of meat and let them chew on it because I feel like especially as a baby, where you're more in touch with like your deep brain, like your initial hunter gathering brain,
Mm.
like your primal brain. And that primal brain wanted to just gnaw stuff off. It wanted to gnaw meat off the bone and scrape that bone with your teeth if you've got them yet. um, and so I think that that's like it's a natural thing. And eating cooked meat, and specifically a lot of like cracking bones open and eating bone marrow. He was just eating some bone marrow the other night, which was great. That is like literally how our brains, like that's how we're able to have this podcast today, is because long
Yeah.
ago somebody figured out that this lightning thing makes some fire, and if we throw some meat in that fire and then crack the bones open, we get all this incredible juice out of there that makes us feel a little bit smarter and lets our brains actually work more than just eating straight vegetables and berries.
Yeah, the line of civilization, I think, from the invention to fire to the development of Bitcoin podcasts is actually like a linear progression. If you take it back long, it's natural. It's the order of things. It's the way things are supposed to happen. So that's
Couldn't agree
very, very
more.
cool. Yeah, of
All of
course.
human
So,
evolution has led us to Bitcoin podcasting.
which is like there's so many jokes to be made about Bitcoin podcasts, and I do want to talk about seriously about podcasts a little bit later because I do think that we all make so many of these jokes, but there's like a fundamental, deeply important cultural truth underneath the jokes that I think Bitcoiners appreciate it. I'm not sure everybody else appreciates it yet, but that is our alpha. That I think that we get it now. But what I want to ask you, Walker, and I'm obviously not going to do any of the obligatory intro stuff, just because everybody listening to this is going to know who you are. I'm sure many people listen to your podcast and have seen all of your videos. Maybe they know all the old school videos with you and Carl that you guys used to do back in the day. But I'm curious about your journey a little bit because I don't feel like I mean, you obviously host a very popular podcast, but I feel like you don't talk about yourself as much, which is obviously like to your credit, running a podcast and giving space to the guests. But I'm sure that I'm not the only person who's curious about your background. Like how did you get here? What did you kind of aspire to be when you were, I assume probably roughly the same age. I'm going to be 37. Um, but like, what did you want to do in life? What did you study? And how did you kind of end up here where we're podcasting about podcasting?
Yeah, I'm 33 right now in that sweet, early 30s spot or early mid 30s. How did I get here? It's boy, what a journey it's been. Well, in terms of like the short story is like ignored Bitcoin several times from starting. I think the first time I heard about Bitcoin was in the Silk Road days. because a friend was utilizing the services offered by the Silk Road and told me about it. I was like, hey, I've got to like get this Bitcoin, these Bitcoins thingies, and then I have to use that to purchase the goods that I'm trying to acquire right now on this freedom-loving online marketplace. And I was like, yeah, that's like cool, nerd. Like, I don't care. Like, back to whatever fiat stuff I was doing at that point. And then I think I just forgot about it for like several more years until 2017. And that was when the run up was happening in 2017. And like, I was at that point, Carl and I had been together for some years. At that point, we met quite a while ago, like beginning of college. And she said like, oh, my dad is like telling me about this Bitcoin, these other cryptocurrencies, things like we should like look at this. And we look at it, you see the price of Bitcoin, and at that time I forget what it was, but it was like basically like at that big old top in 2017. Now I was like, whew, I cannot afford a full Bitcoin, so I need to find one of these other cryptocurrencies. Oh look, there's this like she bought like a couple of Ethereum at that point because we didn't realize you could just buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. So I will always have empathy for people who do not yet realize that, because I myself was one of those people. So like who am I to judge, right? That's why, I'm educated in Bitcoin now. So she bought a couple of Ethereum. I was like, I don't even know if I can afford a couple of Ethereum. Like I'm going to get a couple of these Litecoins. That seems like a good thing. Maybe it'll be worth as much as a Bitcoin someday. And we all know how that story goes. They were not ever. And I'm pretty sure I like even years later when I finally like found that altogether and sold them, it was like they hadn't even gone up to that previous high. Like, so we've all been there, right? Or some of us just became Bitcoin maximalists right out the gate. Wasn't me. I had a longer, more meandering journey, but I ignored Bitcoin for another 3+ years after that. And then COVID rolls around. I think everybody had a little bit more time on their hands. Carl and I had left downtown Chicago because things were getting pretty weird. We left like before the lockdown started.
And that's interesting. My wife and I did the exact same thing. Were you there for like the riots and
the
everything?
protests?
Were you there for, yeah. We were right downtown. We were on Randolph Street.
Yeah, we were in the loop. So like
us too. Yeah.
It was yes, it started getting really weird really fast. Wow. They were boarding up our building. And we were like, what we do not want to be trapped in a high rise right now. Let's get out of here. We went to southern Wisconsin and out in the middle of the woods, basically. And we're like, we'll just go there for we'll pack enough clothes for like 3 weeks. Like 3 weeks, this should all blow over. Well, it was like 3 years later and we were still there, but I'm so glad we did that because we got there and again, things started getting really weird. Everything's getting locked down and, things, they're starting to talk about sending out checks to people. It's like, what is going on here? I had not really gone down like the, monetary theory rabbit hole at all yet. And then started to I remembered something about, okay, Bitcoin, like what was that thing about? Like, it's like, fixed supply or something like that. Like, maybe I need to look into this again at this time where they're just creating all this money. And I don't even understand how they're doing that or why they're doing it, but it just doesn't sit right. And then it's like you start going down that Bitcoin rabbit hole and you start getting into, I read the Bitcoin Standard and then started, looking into Austrian economics because of that and going down and realizing there's this whole other school of thought that I had zero exposure to, like zero. I think I took one macroeconomics class in college as an elective because I was in the College of Engineering, and so I only got a couple of electives, but that's like one of the ones I did. And I was like, this does not seem like I don't remember them mentioning anything about Austrian economics when I was in there, but there's this whole massive school here. What's that all about? I started going down that, and then at a certain point, Carl and we started making Bitcoin content. Excuse me, and it really just started from a place of, apologies again, started from a place of we'd been lurking on Bitcoin Twitter. This was right as things started getting toppy and then blew off that top and came crashing down and everybody started getting went from peak euphoria to a lot of bearishness and just people down in the dumps as Bitcoin just kept, going lower. And we were like, man, people need to lighten up a little bit. We need to laugh a little bit. I don't have any background in comedy or theater or anything like that. But Carla does have some, quite a bit actually, which explains why she's such a great singer and actress and everything. But we just started messing around. We're like, let's just make fun of types of, Bitcoin haters. We made this video and posted on TikTok, and it's like a few 100,000 views like that. And we're like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on here? And then we started making some more, and they were all just like blowing up. And we're like, I guess people kind of like this. Like nobody else at that time was doing any sort of like short form sketch comedy around Bitcoin. It just wasn't done at that time. And so I guess we kind of scratched an itch, and later TikTok started shadow banning us and pulling our videos off because we mentioned stuff about COVID and other things that you weren't allowed to say at that time. And then we got really sick of them and just said, we're going to stop that. We're just going to post on Twitter from now on. Started a Twitter account for it. And the rest, as they say, is history. And just we're making content, and never did it with any, we weren't doing it because we were like trying to be influencers or trying to make money. We didn't make any money doing it. I think we did maybe one or two sponsored shorts the entire time, like one for a hardware wallet, one for Brains, the mining company.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. We weren't doing it to make money. We were just doing it to have fun and to bring a little bit of levity, a little bit of just silliness. Be the kind of court jesters. We're not macro analysts. We're not deep technical people. We're just Carla and Walker. And so just started making that content. And then when Carla got pregnant with our incredible son, she was like, "Okay, I'm done making content for a while." It's a ton of work. Yeah. It's a ton of work to do when you're not making any sort of money for it. It's a lot of hours, every single day. And so she took a step back, and I was like, well, what to do? I'm not the genius, video editor that she was. It's kind of loses some of its appeal if it's just a dude doing these sketches and you don't have a beautiful woman there as well. That's the reason people come and watch it. Let's be honest. I don't sing like she does. So that's out. What if I just start a Bitcoin podcast? But I'll make it a Bitcoin podcast making fun of Bitcoin podcasts. I'll call it another fucking Bitcoin podcast. It'll be super meta, basically, Bitcoin, literally Bitcoin podcasters podcasting about Bitcoin podcasts, really make fun of the whole thing because there are too many Bitcoin podcasts. And I was evaluating the space a little bit, and I thought, well, there actually aren't that many Bitcoin podcasts relatively. There's the big ones that I've been listening to since I started my journey. What Bitcoin Did with Peter McCormack. Now Danny Knowles is doing a killer job with that. There was Bitcoin Audible with Guy Swan, which I absolutely loved. Preston Pish's Bitcoin Fundamentals on the Investors Podcast Network. Those were that was my go-to stack, right? And there are others, obviously, many others, but not that many. I thought, well, what if I just actually gave this a shot? You can just do things, right? You can just start a Bitcoin podcast. And so then I did. And I think where I was very fortunate is because Carl and I had done all of this work essentially pro bono. We'd never asked anyone for anything, never tried to, we weren't trying to ever scam anyone, we never did anything like that. So we had a lot of goodwill built up. We were just the court jesters. And through that, I was able to meet amazing people in the Bitcoin community, Bitcoin industry, whatever you want to call it. And so I could just start reaching out to those people to say, hey, do you want to start another another fucking Bitcoin podcast? Do you want to come on? And Bitcoiners, what I find amazing about them is they have a low time preference. They are so aware of the value of their time because they have escaped that fiat world, and they know how valuable their time is and their energy and their work and their insights. And even so, they are so generous with their time to other Bitcoiners who they know are on the same mission. And I'm sure you found that too. It's people are, that's why I come on podcasts now that I've gotten apparently large enough as a podcaster. People want to have me on their podcasts because it's I want to pay it forward. All the people that took time, gave me their scarce time and spent it with me, I want to be able to spend some of mine with other people. And so it's a long roundabout way of saying I never planned on this. I still work a fiat job. I was a industrial and systems engineer. I worked for a big consulting firm for a while. Now I work for our family business, but I didn't plan any of this. I just kind of fell into it with Carla. I'm lucky I had an amazing wife who was going down this rabbit hole with me. That's usually not the case for folks. And then now it's I beat the drum about you can just start a Bitcoin podcast, and we need more of them. And until we have more Bitcoin podcasts than TradFi podcasts, we have not reached saturation. So there is so much room. And I'm like, when you reached out, I was like, heck yeah, happy to go on another fucking Bitcoin podcast, you know? So I hope that answers the question in a super roundabout way.
It does. That was fantastic. Actually, I have so many follow-up questions to that. I mean, the first thing I was thinking about was just how much you were really throwing me back to that experience. My wife and I lived in Chicago at the exact same time. I lived in Chicago for probably 7 years total in my life. But we were right down there, and it was just an absolutely just like bewildering experience to be a part of. And even looking back on it in hindsight, it was so crazy. Like if you were to ask me what was the craziest time in my life, by far, without a doubt, summertime in Chicago in 2020. We did the exact same thing. We got out, and I mean, I remember when the riots were happening, we were literally following the police scanner on our phones. We were right downtown, right in the loop, and just we were watching. We were just like, there's just helicopters and stuff going on, above us. You can watch everybody breaking into everything and burning cars and stuff. I mean, it was just absolutely crazy. I mean, so we left, we came back east. Both of our parents live back here. And so now we have 2 children here. So it all makes sense. But I wanted to ask you, so I mean, you mentioned, I was curious if there are a lot of Bitcoiners, I think, who live kind of double lives, where you are this like a Bitcoiner person by night and you're kind of doing a thing by day. I will confess to you, that's basically what I do. And so sometimes I'm a little careful or strategic. Did you ever live that experience as part of your journey? Or I know you said you work with a family business now, so I assume there's not like the double life thing going on. But was there ever any friction there? I mean, you've been pretty visible for a pretty long time.
Yeah, I mean, definitely friction. And now with the family business, like everybody knows that Carl and I have been into Bitcoin for a while, and they're, people that we work with who got into Bitcoin as well, like independently of us. It's like we didn't get them into Bitcoin. It's like you also found out, okay, they were you were into Bitcoin too. Like, oh, that's really cool. Like, you find out that there are lots of secret Bitcoiners all over the place. Not a ton. Our number is still pretty small, but it is growing. But definitely felt that friction. And I think everybody goes through these stages. This is something, again, I haven't been a Bitcoiner for that long. Getting there, but it's still been basically like one cycle. Like I've only watched one cycle happen from having to having, and now I'm on the other side of that, since the last halving. So it's not like I'm one of those OGs who's seen this time and time again and like knows everything. So I know nothing. Let me preface it with that. But from my experience, you go through these cycles on your Bitcoin journey in the terms of the ways that you evangelize about Bitcoin. And at first, when you're first learning about Bitcoin, because you are just so stoked about it, you are so excited, you are so amazed that there's this whole other world that you didn't know existed. And you want to tell everyone about it, right? Because it's like you just discovered this secret, this truth, and
yeah.
Why isn't anyone talking about this? And so you want to evangelize everyone. I was blowing up my friends, on like created an email list and was sending them all this stuff, annoying the hell out of them. And, you do stuff like that. Or, everyone you meet at a store, you're like, you guys could accept Bitcoin. Have you thought about that? Trying to tip every single waiter you would interact with, every cab driver, everything. Try to, hey, I'll give you a tip in fiat currency if you even like that stuff. But can I give you a tip in Bitcoin as well? And you do stuff like that constantly. And then maybe it's something about like it gets harder to have those conversations in the bear market, even though that's the time when it's most beneficial for somebody else to get into Bitcoin. It's the time when people are least likely to take you seriously, because if they have heard of Bitcoin, they'll say, well, Bitcoin, didn't that just isn't it dead now? Didn't it crash? Isn't that over? I saw many obituaries for it. And so that gets a little bit harder. And so I think at a certain point you realize, okay, I can't save everyone. What can I do? Well, I can try to help those that are closest to me, my immediate family, my dearest friends, the people I love most in this world. I want them, at least them. I'm not going to save everyone, but I should at least try to do what I can to open up the minds of those that are closest to me, that I love the most, that I care about the most. And they should be hopefully the ones that are most willing to listen to me. And so that's what we kind of focused on more, was like, let's get our families on board with this. They don't have to go all in, but let's at least just help them to stack a few sats. Let's show them how to set up a DCA and, just put a little bit in there, because that's a really low friction way to get people involved. And then you sort of reach a point where it's like, at least for me, like a huge reason for starting this podcast, you realize, and this goes back to what you were talking about earlier, but you realize that this medium, this podcasting medium, it's actually so important. It's such a huge part of how a vast swath of people get information, how they consume content, these longer form conversations, which I think is also really interesting, given that there's another side of the population that has gone completely away from that. It's gone completely instant gratification, completely short form, goldfish attention spans, and scroll. Forget, you've already forgotten what was, 3 reels or 3 TikToks or 3, whatever shorts behind. It's living completely in that 60-second time frame. And so I think that it's really powerful to be able to have these conversations where, okay, I was able to maybe get my closest friends and family, I was able to kind of get them at least somewhat on board. But I still want to help educate more people. What's the most effective way for me to do that? Well, maybe it's not the people that I'm interacting with on a day-to-day basis in person. Can still try, but that's been proven to be kind of difficult at times. So why not use the power of the internet to try and reach a wider audience? And, thanks to these incredible tools we have, you can connect with people from all over the world and find that your little Bitcoin podcast can actually make a difference. And that's like an amazing feeling to have people tell you that, or that they discovered another crazy tool for freedom called Nostr through your podcast, and like that sent them down another rabbit hole. So again, long roundabout way of saying, I have felt that friction. You reach a point where you're maybe trying to kind of like stay away from the constant orange pilling, but maybe it's also the realization that you can't actually orange pill anyone. Like I think you can try, you can give people the tools, but ultimately it's a decision that every person makes. They have to decide to want to learn more. You can't just berate somebody until finally they say, oh, well, now I get it. Okay. No, they have to be open to it. You have to give them some information that's helpful, but it's a path they have to go down themselves. You can't, it's like, you can't give them the orange suppository. Like you can set the pill out in front of them, and then they can decide to read up on all of its, freedom enhancing side effects, but they have to take it. They have to go down that. So that's why I think this, every Bitcoiner eventually on a long enough time horizon becomes a podcaster. It's just it's the natural state of the evolution.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect segue. I think a lot about podcasting. I'm curious to get your take on this. We live in such a fragmented world, and we all receive and interact with and interface with our realities in these just incredibly fragmented, disjointed ways. We're, the most advertised to group of people in the history of Earth, of humanity. We are constantly receiving information and incoming and just millions of discrete inputs every day. And like you said, it just absolutely decimates our attention span. We can't sit around for long form content, but we also just kind of atomize and balkanize into these subcultures. And I think legacy media still treats culture as if it's split into these monoliths, left and right. You have MSNBC, you have Fox, just total monoliths. And that's kind of like it's almost a chimerical audience. It's a ghost of an audience that they're kind of presenting themselves to or directing themselves toward. And I think so there's a mismatch there between the culture that they think that they're directing themselves towards and the culture that actually exists, which is a deeply atomized kind of culture of subcultures. And I think where podcasting comes in, and this is the reason why we do actually need more Bitcoin podcasts. Like there does need to be more Bitcoin podcasts because, there are all these different subcultures, and, different people are going to be, if you believe that the way to sort of advance adoption is to kind of spread what you know and just share your experiences. And like you said, don't kind of paternalistically force it on anybody, but just share your experience and see if it resonates with them. Then different people are going to respond to different experiences. They're going to have different entry points to it. Not every, podcast or podcaster is going to present the information in the way that is most easily digestible for every unique individual. So, different people take different approaches to the way they share information, and I think the more of those that we get, it's just like this perfect. There actually is a it's not a disjunction between the uh, the society that you're directing the information at and sort of or that you think you're directing the information at and the actual one that exists. It's a match. So society is atomized. Podcasting addresses that, and it's like this perfect. It seems like a lot of times normies will be like, "Oh, podcasting is so niche. Everything is super niche," and they act like it's a weakness. And I actually think I would propose. I think it's a strength. Um, if we all believe in Bitcoin, but we're not like there's some values that we all share. I think, but we're not like monolithic. Even in political terms, we're not monolithic. But we can kind of address all these different subcultures. And I almost feel like we're getting away with something that we shouldn't like be allowed to get away with. This like perfect information distribution mechanism. Anyways, that's kind of my long-winded theory about why podcasting is perfect for this day and age. It's perfect for Bitcoin, and I also think it serves a little bit of a. I think it serves some good in terms of giving people some long-form content when they're kind of starved for it, which is a little bit of exercise. But do you agree with that, or is any of that off?
I think you are. I think you're spot on, and I think that idea that traditional media, legacy media, that we can't even call them mainstream anymore because they're actually not mainstream
Right.
in terms of actual viewership. It's like Joe Rogan is mainstream, like
That's a good
CNN's
point.
not
That's a good
mainstream
point.
anymore. And you look at these things and you see the power actually that this has. We had a really great proof of this in the last election. Like Trump did a podcast circuit that arguably swung the election, and Bitcoiners I think also helped swing. But like podcasting, going on these different podcasters, different various comedians who had podcasts, going whatever it was, that swung a lot of people in his favor because it's actually humanizing. Because it's really easy to kind of maintain your biases, your preconceived notions about somebody when you only digest what they have to say in a 30-second, 1 minute, whatever hit piece that's posted on, whatever MSNBC, and then pontificated about by the Rachel Maddows of the world for the next, 30 minutes, like after they take one little snippet of something. But when you talk for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, you can get to know somebody a little bit. You can actually get an idea of their motivations. It's a lot harder to be fake in a long form setting. It's pretty easy to be fake when you're just speaking from a podium and it's a short little snippet, or it's a pre-scripted dialogue, whatever it is. It's pretty easy to be fake. It's easy to get away with that. That's very like mid-curve friendly, right? Because it doesn't require you to think too deeply. But when you get somebody in that long form setting, it actually forces that person to make sure that they, first of all, know what the fuck they're talking about if they're asked a question, because you could be asked about absolutely anything. It forces that person to be more vulnerable. And I think it also lets you actually know if that person is just genuinely an NPC who's being fed their lines by somebody else, or if they can actually think on their feet, think for themselves, and come to a human decision about something versus just like, here's what I was fed that I need to say. I'll stick to these talking points. I'll say them. I'll wave and I'll go away. Like that's why Kamala tried to go on a couple of shows which were just very obviously like fake and scripted, and people can see that because in a long form setting, it's just really obvious. It's obvious when somebody is giving you kind of a sweetheart interview, right? Making it into a puff piece. When like Trump, like him or not, like the guy was he was humanized by these podcasts. You were able to see that, wow, this guy, first of all, he just talked for like 2 hours to these, young comedians or whatever. Like, wow, okay, that's kind of like incredible. And you see that, like, you see if people are funny too. That's another thing. Like humor can shine through. And you just realize, like, I think that made Trump so much more likable to a lot of people. And it made Kamala so much less likable to a lot of people because you realize for all of Trump's faults, and I'm, If you follow me on X or on Nostr, you know I'm very quick to point those out because I think we should be honest about our politicians, both their strengths and their shortcomings.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just simps. But man, the guy is good on his feet. He's funny. He's charismatic. And he is great at doing the weave, as he says, you know, starting off in one place, bringing it back. That moves the needle for people. That makes people actually want to say, hold on, I've been told this guy is literally, you know, Hitler mixed with the Antichrist, mixed with Stalin, mixed with every other terrible person from history. But he doesn't seem like that when he just went, you know, talked for 2 hours and, you know, brought up all these things. And wow, and he clarified all these things that were actually not true that the media has been spinning. Wow, okay. Like it moves the needle. I think long form is really valuable in that sense. And long form was not something that the legacy media provided in any meaningful way. Maybe you could argue like 60 minutes, maybe. But even those we saw, you know, were chopped and spliced
Heavily edited, yeah.
so even though it's long form, it's still edited, it's still produced, it still doesn't feel real. A long form podcast feels real because it is. And I think that really resonates with people in a time, especially where so much AI generated slop is being thrown out there, when the legacy media is obviously dying and is kind of grasping at straws, trying to take, you know, a few last breaths, trying to maintain its control over its one to many centralized distribution mechanism. Meanwhile, people are they're craving authenticity. They're craving real conversations, and they're craving just like people just being fucking human. They're sick of everything being so polished. They're sick of everything being so produced. They're sick of everything being so contrived and completely propagandized. And not to say that you can't use a podcast to, you know, spread propaganda. Like, you know, everything's propaganda, right? But at least it's propaganda that you have a better chance of figuring out, is this person full of shit or not? Like it's really, unless you are a really slick psychopath, it is very difficult to convince people over many, many, many hours of unscripted content that, you know, that you are something that you are not. So
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think you kind of took the words out of my mouth because I was going to kind of sum that up by saying, like, podcasts, they are real. There's something magical about the unscriptedness of it, and we can kind of make fun of it, but they are real. And I think so much, again, to get back what I was saying earlier, like so much of contemporary culture right now is like about distancing people from the real. I was talking to Steven about this. He's got like a whole spiel on this. I think it's pretty good. It's like, you know, you're in life, and I think Bitcoiners are more inclined to kind of, I guess, vibe with this, but you know, there's contemporary culture wants to put some distance between you and what's real, such that everything that you, the reality that you experience is closer to a simulation of reality. It's kind of like an NPC thing where, I mean, you're just, I mean, there's like this French philosopher, Baudrillard, he has this, you know, simulation, the simulacrum. It's like, we are now in this place with AI, like you said, it's very, very hard to get to what's real. People want what's real. I think they do crave authenticity. They crave the human. But it's just increasingly really profoundly difficult to kind of get there. And I think you know, sitting down and talking to somebody for like an hour or 2 hours, 90 minutes, whatever, completely unscripted, there's something very, very almost vulnerable and real about that. I mean, if you're funny, that's going to come across. If you're not funny at all, that's going to come across. Um, but yeah, it's very, very human. And kind of transitioning like a little bit, I think what gives me hope for the things that I care deeply about in the world, which are I care about, you know, the humanity. My background is very much in the humanities. You know, I thought I was going to be an English professor for a while until I kind of like witnessed I witnessed the academy kind of like eat itself in a way. Like when I came up and was like studying English literature, it was a little bit different than it is now. But you know, and I think we've just distance ourselves from having these real encounters and of like sort of seeking truth so much. I think art used to play an important role in that, and was an important medium for people to try to pursue that. And I do think that people crave it, but I just think that we live in such, I think fiat has really taken that from us. And I want to share this with you actually, Walker. I came up with this for you. Um, Inspired by you. So you have this thing politically where you say there is no red, there is no blue, there is the state, and there is you. And I do think you live by that. You're kind of an equal opportunity critic. If you see something that's not, it's principles based. If you don't agree with something, doesn't matter the side, you'll call it out. But for me, I was thinking about this from, the perspective of art, and I was saying there is no beauty, there is no truth, there is the ravenous maw of fiat commerce, and there is you.
I
Um,
like that.
and so I was thinking of, artists and creatives working today. They have to conform to these just ruthless commercial demands. Otherwise, they can't make money because the fiat world, everything is getting more expensive. So your creative gift is just increasingly starved of oxygen, unless you make something that you think is in line with whatever is commercially trendy or commercially viable at the time, and then you sell that. And so we get this really, I think, kind of vapid state of affairs in art, and in the creative arts. And so that's there's not even a question there. That's just me
Yeah.
kind of riffing on stuff that I care about off of what you said, but
No,
there it is.
I love that, and I think that that's actually, it's such an important realization that, kind of the idea, that fiat really ruins everything. And if you look in just the art world, let's say, people, one of the biggest destructive things that fiat has done is that it has forced people to no longer give a shit about proof of work. They don't care about the time, attention, and detail that goes into something. They don't care about the value that has been created by something. What they care about is, can they get something that gives them, a simulation version of a nice thing, something that looks nice, something that's Instagram nice, that looks great in, when it's photographed and taken, or have a video of it. But it doesn't matter if it's actually nice. What matters is that it's cheap. What matters is that it delivers, next day shipping with Prime. What matters is that it is easy for them to get, and that it will give them the feeling, some scratching that itch that they have to have something that is beautiful and lasting. But it won't be lasting because it's made of plaster. It's not made of stone, right? It's built on a foundation of sand. It's not built on a foundation of bedrock. You see this in architecture as well. You see this literally in construction materials. But you see it. I think art is just such a great example of that. Where, to your point about needing to basically struggle as an artist, struggle because of the commoditization of everything, right? And this idea that you
Totally.
can't just sit back and make the art that you know to be beautiful and then stand by that, because you've got to put food on the table, right? And you look back at when during the Renaissance, how were these artists able to do such amazing things that took so much time and attention? It's not because they were selling, putting them out in the marketplace and selling them. It's because they had patrons. They had
Right.
folks like, the Medici family that were bankrolling them basically and just said, I just want you to make art, or I just want you
Do
to
your
invent,
thing.
or
Do your thing.
you just do that, and we will supply the capital that enables that. And so because of that, you don't have perhaps the perverse forces of a strangely incentivized market that are, it's just, we don't live in a free market right now. Fiat can't be a free market. If you don't have a free market in money, you can't have a free market in anything else. We do not have a free market. We have something that looks kind of like a free market, in the United States. It's freer than most. It's like the, skinniest kid at fat camp, but like it's still fatty. And like it's all contrived. It's all driven by perverse incentives. And the ultimate perverse incentive is the inability to think long term. You cannot think long term. You necessarily must focus on the short term. Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to put food on the table. You're not going to be able to pay your bills. You're not going to be able to take care of your family. And so much of this, like people aren't able to, you look at the rise of, dual, both parents working, which like sometimes maybe both parents want to work. I would argue that in most cases that ends up in probably worse outcomes, but it's just been a reality of the system, right? Like it is ultimately insane to me that you will have two parents needing to work to be able to have the family get by. And maybe they both work multiple jobs, right? Instead of being able to have one parent work and one parent stay home and focus on spending time and raising your kids. Because the state will never love your kids like you do. The state can't love your kids. It's the fucking state. You love your kids. Your kids love you. You should be the one spending the most time with them. But instead, we have been forced to outsource that into the neo-Prussian, neo-Nazi compulsory public school model, which is a whole different story. I was homeschooled for what it's worth also, so I very deeply feel this. We will homeschool our son and any future children as well. Very grateful to my parents for doing that. But it's all, and then it's this cyclical meat grinder of basically, raising kids to be these cubicle sitting, rule following, clock in, clock out, stand in a straight line people, and do it all over again with the next generation, and have both parents forced to work, and have both parents have people paying for other people to raise that, working so you can pay for somebody else to raise your kid, is just, to me, so insane. And so where this comes back to the arts is, again, it's like when you can't focus on just making things beautiful, when you can't focus on what is what you know to be right, like you know that these things are right, or you know that you can create this thing of beauty, but you know that that thing of beauty that you want to create is just not possible because you have to worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. You can't think about what can I do over the course of the next year, 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, whatever Bitcoin cycle you want to look at. You have to focus on the here and now. You have to focus on, you have to be a goldfish. You have to continually just kick that can down the road, not be able to create things that are lasting and beautiful. And that includes your family. You can't focus on the long term of your family. You have to just focus on, well, we just need to get through this right now. And this is just what we have to do. And maybe we don't like it, but what other option is there? And that's why Bitcoin makes me so hopeful. And I think for anybody that gets into Bitcoin and starts going down this rabbit hole, and then also holds Bitcoin for over the course of a couple of years and sees their purchasing power grow, sees their economic energy maintain its value and actually grow its value, you start to realize that I have breathing room. I have the ability to think more long-term. I was really bad at saving. I was terrible at it prior to Bitcoin. Now I'm great at saving because I just save in Bitcoin. But I think most people are really bad at saving. And I want to distinguish saving from investing. And sorry if I'm getting slightly off topic here, but
no, go for it.
I think it's an important thing. It's like when you have sound money, you have the ability to save. You save in money. You invest money into businesses, into whatever it might be. That's investment. That's a different thing. But fiat does not enable you to save, because if you save in fiat, you lose economic energy. You lose purchasing power over time. That in and of itself, that at the core of it, that disease, that fiat disease, is so incredibly destructive. Because if you've got both parents who are already working one job, two jobs, whatever it might be, and trying to do right by their kids as much as they possibly can, man, and they don't have the ability to just save money, because they can't just save money. They have to work another job, which is, how do I invest my money so that it gains purchasing power? Or I have to pay somebody else to invest my money for me, and they just throw it into the S&P 500 anyway, which doesn't even really keep up with inflation, but I'm told that it's good to get 7% a year. It's such a destructive machine. And I'm so grateful that Bitcoin exists, that some pseudonymous, shadowy supercoder decided to create this magic internet money that now actually allows people to think for the long term. And I think we're going to see a resurgence of the strong family unit. I think we already are amongst Bitcoiners. I'm sure you feel this personally. It gives you more breathing room. It gives you more space. It gives you more room to plan. I think we're going to see it in art as well. You see, I just had Madex on my show recently. He's awesome, dude, incredible artist, and actually makes things that are meaningful and take time. And you know what? They're expensive if you want to buy them.
Yeah,
because they should be. Because he's poured his blood, sweat, and tears into these things. Like, things that take a lot of work to create have a lot of value. And he could churn out printed posters till the cows come home, but that's not his shtick, right? So I think we're going to see a return to patronage in the arts. I hope that we do. And I think that is going to usher in a beautiful creative bloom amongst artists who actually finally have the ability to think long term. And I think it's going to usher in a bloom in families that have the ability to think long term and can actually prioritize the family unit over just scraping by.
Yeah, I totally agree with basically all that. I'm glad you brought up the patronage point because that's something that I deeply believe as well. Is I think patronage is coming back, and I actually think it's going to be like you. I agree. I think it's going to be a great thing, and I hope that Bitcoiners take it seriously. That's at some point, I do think it becomes our duty, our responsibility, in terms of re-architecting culture a little bit to participate in some of that. And I talk about this guy all the time, but there's a writer named Lewis Hyde who wrote a book called The Gift about art in the market economy now. And I think what you were kind of getting at and articulating really well, Walker, was like the depths of the destructiveness of the fiat system. When you have the market economy enter every single aspect of human existence, including the family, including art. Um, it destroys something very, very fundamental. Lewis Hyde has this concept of, he says, art exists in this kind of sort of uncomfortable, but nevertheless, it exists in this equilibrium between a market economy and a gift economy. It has one foot in both. And he says, art, it can exist without a market economy. It cannot exist without a gift economy. What he means by the gift economy is that when people create art, artists, if you hear them describe the inspiration for what they're making, usually they're describing, oh, it kind of I can't really totally explain how it arrived. It was sort of was channeled through me. It just worked through me. I received the gift, and then I expressed that. I had the bandwidth and the space to be open to receive the gift, and then I expressed it. But then the audience also has to receive it as a gift. They have to have the bandwidth. They have to be not totally nuked by TikTok and short form content and just have their own attention spans just completely destroyed. They have to be able to receive the arts, at least in part, as a gift. Otherwise, it's not really like an exchange of arts. Otherwise, it's just a merely commercial exchange. And so I do think patronage is coming back. And I think patronage will it'll help bring the gift economy back a little bit because you don't have to think about how am I going to sell this thing tomorrow to feed my family tomorrow. You can sort of think more long term about what's the value of this to the world, 100 years from now, or 50 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 1,000 years from now, versus, how do I get more plays on Spotify so I can get, an extra 7 cents, to like buy something for that I need for tomorrow, which is absolutely crazy. So I'm really, I think I haven't said this out loud publicly, but I mean, one of my goals actually is, I want to eventually, on a Bitcoin standard, I would love to start a publishing house. I would love to sort of start kind of like a boutique, kind of like film studio, start doing like where you can experiment and you can actually fund projects that are a little bit edgier, a little bit more experimental, a little bit more commercially risky, maybe aren't going to make a lot of money in the short term, but your company's on a Bitcoin standard. So you're okay. And other projects will make money and you can have a more, I guess, flexible equilibrium financially. But I feel very, very hopeful about the state of the arts going forward with Bitcoin. I hope that I'm right. I'm not just being overly sanguine, but it sounds like you're hopeful too. I mean, how would so your most recent episode the episode with Madex, by the way, is very good. So I would definitely plug that for people. But the most recent episode, or I guess it's no longer the most recent episode, but the one with Hodl and Kason, I feel like those two are great with each other because I feel like Hodl is, you know, despite his kind of rhetoric, I do think he's like quite a hopeful human being. I think Kason is a little darker. I love them both. But there's a little bit of a tug of war there that's always thought provoking to listen to. But how hopeful do you feel, Walker? Like, you sound like you're expressing hope. I mean, what are the vibes like? Do you feel like we're gonna be okay? Or are you a little bit, I don't know, skeptical?
Overall, the vibes are very hopeful for me. I'm extremely optimistic about the future of humanity as we begin to recognize Bitcoin as the new bedrock, the new monetary bedrock of the future that we will build. So long term, I'm incredibly optimistic. I'm incredibly bullish on humanity. I think things are going to be better than we could imagine in this current fiat paradigm. Short term, I think things are going to get really, really messy. I think things are going to get extremely chaotic, much more so than they are now. And so, like, in the next 5 to 10 years, I think there may be some really dark, very dark times for humanity overall. I think that doesn't mean that it's going to be dark for everyone. I think that people who are right now saving in Bitcoin and planning years and decades into the future for themselves and their families and their communities, they're going to be all right. If you have Bitcoin, you will be able to weather the storm that is to come. If you do not have Bitcoin, this is going to be incredibly destructive, incredibly dark, and you will grow increasingly nihilistic because you will not have another option. Bitcoin is the only light in this darkness that has the potential to lead you to the other side relatively unscathed. Now, that doesn't mean just because you hold Bitcoin right now, you're going to be able to continue creating value through this period and continue to hold on to that Bitcoin, because people who are unproductive, their Bitcoin is going to slip away from them because it's going necessarily will happen. So long term, I'm very hopeful. I'm even hopeful short term for myself and my family and for people that I know that are saving in Bitcoin and live on a Bitcoin standard. But I do think we're going to enter a period of intense upheaval. We are undeniably in the midst of a fourth turning, right? If you ascribe to that theory.
Yeah.
I think that we also have a sort of a cyclical convergence happening right now, if that makes sense, in the sense that you see multiple different long-term cycles essentially reaching ahead. You have this fourth turning, kind of this generational model, right? You have also you can take Ray Dalio's long-term debt cycles. You have the cycles of fiat currency. You have, if you want to get a little bit deeper into some of the more, let's say, old school methods, you have the anacyclosis theory of Polybius, which is kind of, this is like a couple thousand years ago.
I heard you talk about this, and I want you to elaborate on it because I think I ChatGPT'd it when I first heard it, but because it sounds very, very intense. But just break that down for listeners a little bit.
Okay, so Polybius is a Greek dude from a long time ago. So basically, this theory breaks down to humanity goes through these, like, it's a cycle, it's a governance cycle theory. So you have the fourth turning, which is kind of these generational cycles. Ray Dalio, he's talking about long-term debt cycles, right? Solar cycles talk about, solar cycles. Anacyclosis is the idea that humanity goes through these governance cycles, and that it starts out with like a kind of dictatorship, monarchy type situation, or excuse me, it starts out with monarchy. Things go pretty well until that monarchy kind of goes down into this tyrannical system. So then you're in this sort of tyranny, this dictatorship, right? So monarchy into tyranny eventually. Tyranny then only goes on for so long before an aristocracy rises up and says, basically a group of elites, but I mean elites in a good way, that says, we need to get rid of this, this tyrant, essentially, and we need to build a better model on top of this. And then, so tyranny then gives way to an aristocracy, and that works for a while as well, until that aristocracy turns into an oligarchy. And then things aren't going so well. You've just kind of replaced the single master with a group of masters, and you're sort of, back where you started a little bit, and but you're still moving along this cycle. And then oligarchy ultimately leads to democracy. And that's great for a while. The power is back in the hands of the people. You've overthrown these oligarchs, and that's great. We're at the tail end of the democracy stage right now, I believe. And I say tail end because the next thing that happens is something called oglocracy, which is a fancy word for mob rule. And mob rule, as the name implies, means that when you have democracy, it is going to inevitably trend toward a large portion of the population basically making the decisions for everyone, regardless of whether or not those decisions are good and regardless of who those decisions hurt. The governance is now dictated by the mob. And that's not great. And that ultimately leads, after that mob rule goes on for long enough, usually a strong man, a good man, a good leader steps to the forefront and says, we can't take this anymore. We are living in chaos. Because that's the other thing. Autocracy, mob rule is characterized by chaos. It's that, it necessarily must be chaos, because you can't have a ton of people making the decisions for a ton of people. It just it just doesn't work, right? And then you're back to monarchy again, because that strong man has pulled out. He has gotten enough supporters. He has pulled the society out of that autocracy, out of that mob rule. And now you're back to kind of a golden era of a kingdom, a monarchy, whatever you'd like to call it. But of course, then now we're just back at the start of the cycle again. And so it goes again and again. Yeah. So I believe that we're at the end of the democracy. We're at the democracy transitioning to autocracy stage. And what you're going to start to see is the emergence of strong leaders who say, this is just broken. This isn't working. We do not, we're not working as a society anymore. I think you've seen something like that happen in El Salvador already. You went from, quite literally mob rule in a different sense. This was gang rule, but mob rule nonetheless, just by a little bit of a different name. And you had the emergence of a strong leader. Now, whatever you think of Bukele and the way that he went about that, it doesn't matter. He's inarguably brought the country from being one of the most violent countries in the world to one of the safest in the world. So that happened. And that, again, that may turn into tyranny. That's the next step in that cycle. And so that's the other thing, is that these things aren't necessarily, we're in a globalized world now. So this throws a little bit of a wrench into the gears. I don't think Polybius could have conceptualized the interconnectedness of the entire globe that we have today. But at different places in the world, they're obviously the future's here. It's just not evenly distributed yet, right? Different societies in the world are at different places in this cycle. But ultimately, I think from a U.S. perspective, we are nearing the end of that democracy cycle, which, again, you combine this democracy turning into autocracy from anacyclosis, with the fourth turning, with kind of the long-term debt cycles, with the fiat currency life cycles. And I think you just have a recipe for chaos on an unprecedented scale, because this is also happening at the same time we have a industrial, technological revolution in the form of AI that we have never, we have no idea what happens next after this. We know what happened when we went from, horse and buggy to the car, right? And we can see that. And, we got electricity and, automation and all these things. This is paradigm shifting, and it's an accelerant, right? So it is going to massively magnify the chaos. But we've also never had Bitcoin before. We've never had perfected sound money. We've never had money that you can send around the world at the speed of light and nobody can stop you. And that money also happens to be perfected sound money. That's incredible. So all this sounds doom and gloomy. And I don't mean for it to be more so just that I see these cycles converging, and it seems obvious to me that things must get more chaotic, more violent, more destructive before we start to rebuild. We've got to turn to ash before the phoenix can rise again. The benefit of that is that who is going to help rebuild the world, right? Who is going to make the decisions about what kind of societies, what kind of structures we want to conceive of and build? It's going to be the people who can weather that storm best. And I believe that is going to be in large part Bitcoiners, who, at least at this time, because it's a fairly small minority of people, we're not all the same. There's no mold for a Bitcoiner, but you at least have some core values that we share, which is you believe in individual freedom and liberty, believe in the right to speak freely and transact freely, which ultimately freedom of transaction has to come before the freedom of speech in a technological age. You believe that we should think more long term. Instead of always just thinking about tomorrow, we should think about the next year, the next decade. We should think about what kind of families we want to build and how we want to pass on those values to those families. So yeah, I'm short term cautious. Long term, I'm incredibly optimistic and incredibly hopeful.
That's really well said. The cycle of governance that you were describing, it's I think one of my hot takes politically is probably that I think Americans especially struggle to sort of step back from their like democracy, I guess paradigm and framework, and view anything else with any level of objectivity. Um, and and I guess what I'm getting at is like for me, I think all forms of governance ultimately trend towards tyranny of some kind. Ultimately, like all of them are going to sort
Agreed.
of get, which is why that's what then like initiates the transition to the next one. Um, and so I think Americans have a hard time thinking like, oh, is there any good period of like monarchy, or is there any good period of like oligarchy? And like maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I don't know, but I do think that the viewing, I guess, like whatever Americans think of as democracy as like so utterly sacrosanct, especially because I think it's more of like an adulterated version of democracy that they're thinking about anyway. I also don't want this to be misinterpreted as me like advocating for monarchy. Certainly not doing that or any of that, but I do think it's worth noting that all of these systems like tend towards tyranny in the same way that I guess in thermodynamics, everything like tends towards chaos. And so I think it's a good segue into we do have now, like you alluded to, very, very important freedom technology tools available to us that no matter what the governance, I guess, like regime that we're under, that people can use and kind of take shelter in and use to weather the storm. And one that I want to talk about, which, I've kind of been in and out of it. I'm trying to spend more time in it and be better at it, but I'm just candidly, technologically, I can be a bit challenged. But I want to talk about uh, Nostr or Nostr, however the hell people say it.
However you want to say it.
Yeah, however you feel. So for Nostr, I mean, you have made a very intentional, like you've like put yourself on Nostr. You advocate for Nostr. You're a freedom tech person, and you're always. I mean, even today you were posting on Nostr about Fountain and trying to move people to Fountain, versus like something like Spotify that's obviously super centralized. But talk to me about why Nostr is so important to you, why you're spending so much of your time there, why other people who are maybe kind of normies should consider it. And do you view like the UX? I personally, I find the UX a little bit hard at time. I mean, I had to ask a question to somebody today on it. I'm working on. I'm out there. I'm trying not to look stupid, like asking the questions and things like that. But I want to spend more time there. Um, do you do you think the UX is a little bit of a burden? Are we getting there? And kind of what's your pitch to people for Nostr? Because I would like to also try to move myself there and try to help move other people there to spend some time with that freedom technology.
Yeah, I think I say Nostr for what it's worth. I think I'm in the small minority there, though. From what everybody has told me, my own wife doesn't even say Nostr; she says Nostr. So take that as you will. But the reason that I've focused on this so much, and I started using it in early December 2022, I guess it was. Yeah, yeah, early
Yeah, you
December
were very,
2022.
very early.
I think I was maybe like oh, a couple weeks before Jack Dorsey got on there, and that was a wild thing to watch. And then the Nostrich image that you see is one that I used. Will Kasser and JB55, the creator of Damus, used his AI that he ported into Nostr to write me a joke about Nostr. Like, what else do you do? You're messing around. It's like, oh, what do you call a nosy ostrich, a nostrich? I was like, that's a terrible joke, but actually that idea of a nostrich is kind of like cool. So let's like create that. And next thing you know, a few days later, Jack's like posting this on Twitter at that point, and like, wow, what a wild ride that was. But the reason that I am stuck with it, and like if you think the UI is clunky now, you should have seen it then. Like it has honestly improved so rapidly, and it's important to remember also there are so many different applications that you can use to interact with Nostr. If you don't like one, just so you're given an npub, a public key, and an nsec, a private key, when you create your quote account. But it's not an account, it's a cryptographic key pair. But the important thing there is that unlike having a username and a password on Twitter, on X, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it might be, you have a public key and a private key, much like in Bitcoin. And with Nostr, you can take that public key, private key pair and put it into any client that you want. So you are not held hostage. If you don't like the user experience on one particular application, that's fine. Just use a different one. And that's kind of the beauty of it. Now, keep that NSEC, keep that private key very, very safe, because if you lose it, there is no customer support to give it back to you. You cannot, reset it because you can't get a password to your email or something like that. There is no email involved. It's just, you can be completely anonymous, generate a key pair, and you're off to the races. But the great thing is that if you do lose it, you can just create another key pair. There's no problem there. But keep that private key safe. But the point here is that if you don't like the experience in a particular app you're using, try another one. There are now dozens, maybe even hundreds of different applications out there. There are different Nostr clients that people have built. And so if you don't like the particular experience on one, check out another one. That was what I would recommend for people, because they all have a little bit of a different flavor. Right now, Nostr has been primarily used for essentially Twitter clones. Basically, what short form, microblogging type social media clients. That's expanding because Nostr, which stands for notes and other stuff transmitted by relays, there's a whole lot that can be done on the other stuff side of things. There's a whole lot of other things in addition to just short form notes. I live stream my podcast only on Nostr. It's the only place you can watch my show live. I do it via zap.stream. It's a great service created by the developer Kieran. And there are so many different, I think there's maybe a couple other live streaming services you can use there, but there's literally, I can't even possibly name all the different clients that there are on Nostr now. I could probably do that when I initially joined. There was, a couple handfuls of them. Now it's not the case. So you have optionality, and that's really important. The other important thing is, getting kind of just beyond the UX, is that optionality, while it allows you to choose whatever type of application experience you'd like to have, that optionality is incredibly important from a censorship resistant perspective, because you have a public key, private key pair. Let's say one app gets shut down. Let's say, for instance, Damus got banned from the App Store in China. I think it was in spring of 2023. They got banned. China did not like it. Will
Shocking.
told me when I know. I just had him back on the show actually, and he told me that before the app got banned from the App Store in China, it is still to this day, like, their biggest spike in downloads was from right before that ban. So the Chinese government saw, the CCP saw this happening. And any good communist party, they were like, whoa, what's happening over here? Hold on, what's this tool that people are using? And we got to stop this right now. We can't have people speaking freely. So that's the thing. Any individual Nostr client or Nostr relay could conceivably shut down, could be shut down by the creator of it, could be shut down by a government. We don't know. But the beauty is that there are hundreds of relays. Again, that's the transmitted by relays parts of Nostr around the world that will relay your information that you publish. So it is not that you cannot get shut off from using any one client or any one relay. It's that you can't be shut off from using all of them. And worst comes to worst, you can just vibe code your own client and set up your own app and set up your own relay. I have a Nostr relay that I run on my Umbrel node, which is really great. It allows me to literally just back up my notes to that node. That's a pretty neat little thing to have. So you have these different layers of censorship resistance there, which I think is really, really important. And the reason that is so important, and if you live in I was going to say a Western nation, but then I was thinking of the UK, where it is basically just, censorship on steroids right now. They're so enlightened over there with everything they're doing. Really nice job, UK. Just the end of a couple 1,000-year empire. You have really ushered in a beautiful time for your people, you totalitarian fucks. Sorry. That is just a shame. But I believe that Peter McCormack will liberate the United Kingdom. I'm very confident in that. But anyway, if you live in a place where you have not experienced censorship, like real censorship, whether that be through your communication being censored or your money being censored, you probably don't really see that much of a need for Bitcoin or Nostr from a censorship resistance perspective, right? Like, you may think, oh, well, Nostr, that's a neat little, another social media app. You may think Bitcoin, oh, well, that's, just a good store of value. And maybe you've gotten that far. But until you felt the pain of what it means to be censored, what it means to be not allowed to speak freely and to be heard, to actually, because you can speak into a void, but that doesn't get you very far, but to actually have your message be distributed and heard, you may not realize how important that is. And we take a lot of the freedoms that we have in America, and government does not give you freedoms. Government gives writes laws to protect those freedoms, ideally, unless you're in the UK or one of the other totalitarian nations on this planet. But if you still have the ability to speak freely, you may not see why that is so important. But at the minute that is taken away and you realize how detrimental that is to your ability to do anything, if you have the freedom to transact taken away, you're going to find it even harder to have the freedom to speak freely as well, or the freedom to travel freely, the freedom to do anything. So the freedom to transact is necessarily the base layer of these other freedoms, right? But the freedom to communicate freely, to speak freely, to publish freely, that is right in line with Bitcoin. You need the freedom to transact and the freedom to communicate in a censorship-resistant way in order to take full advantage of both. So I view them as kind of having a symbiotic relationship where they both are necessary for each other, and you need both of them to be free. And without that, we would be in a very, very dark world. So I would say right now, the UX on Nostr is improving every day. And again, if you don't like one particular client, try another. The two that I use literally every single day, I use Damus. It was the first Nostr client that I used. That's available on iOS. And I believe they just announced that it's now available on Android as well. They've also got a desktop note deck application too, which is kind of like, I'm forgetting what they used to call it on Twitter, but it's like, the power user mode where you can see a bunch of different feeds at once. Doing really cool stuff there. That was created by Will Kasserin. I should mention also, all of this tech is open source. Like it's beautiful. People are building out in the open. The other one I use every day is I use Primal. It's a very, very clean user experience. They have a built-in wallet there. It's very excellent, and I use both of those every single day. I use some others as well. I use Zap.stream. I've used literally dozens of different Nostr clients at this point, but try one out is what I would recommend to people. And if you do come say hello to me on there, happy to boost your note and tell people to go and interact with you, because it can maybe feel a little bit lonely at first if you're not following a lot of people. So follow a bunch of people, start interacting with people. It's a good vibe over there right now because it's mostly, not all, but it's a lot of Bitcoiners over there and developers and some content creators as well. And I think that the people are ultimately going to, more and more people are going to come to Nostr because the actual user experience will become better than on any of these centralized platforms, simply because everything is interoperable. You can use any client you want, and I can publish from Damus, and it shows up on Primal as well for everyone, and for vice versa. Like, everything shows up everywhere. It's not a global state. It's not on a blockchain. So there may be some things that are a little out of sync, but overall, you have a better experience right now, even with some of the clunky UX that's gotten a ton better. But even right now, it's a better experience because you have that portability of your account and that ability to publish everywhere all at once. But if that's not enough for you, I would say that you should think long and hard. If you see what's happening in the UK right now, a Western nation, a developed country that is now completely gone off the rails when it comes to free speech. I mean, they never really had free speech anyway, not in the way we do in America, but they had, they had some semblance of it at least. But if you've seen how crazy things have gotten over there and you think, well, that could never happen here in America, I would argue it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder for that to happen in America. Thankfully, we have things like the Second Amendment, which protect the First. But that can happen anywhere. And in this chaotic period that is to come, you are going to want the ability to not only speak freely, but to hear the free speech of others and to be able to get information that is cryptographically signed. This sounds like a kind of annoying technical thing, but it's actually really important in the age of AI. Somebody can, people do all the time, spoof, my image and create a X account that looks just like mine and copies everything. And it can sometimes be a little bit hard for people to know which one is the real one, right? You may notice that there's a little, some different spelling in the handle or whatever, but I'm not cryptographically signing anything that I post. Technically, X can make posts on my account for me. I have no way to stop them from doing that. They're a centralized corporation. They control the back end and the front end and everything. It's their database, right? On Nostr, you can know that when I post something, it's coming from me because it is literally cryptographically signed by me. That is going to become hugely important in the years that are to come, in terms of ensuring that you actually know that the message you are receiving is coming from the person that is purportedly sending it. And that's the beauty of public-private key cryptography. Like, you can actually know that and verify that, and that cannot be spoofed. So does that answer the question? I hope.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah, I was, the way I kind of think about it is like, a good pitch for Bitcoin for regular people is, it's kind of a bet against governments ever figuring out how to be solvent or ever figuring out how to not be in an epic amount of debt. So if you think that governments are going to run up the debt perpetually and forever, you should buy Bitcoin. If you think that these social media platforms are going to continue to get more and more centralized, that free speech is going to continue to get, throttled more and more, if you think that's the trend directionally that we're going, you should probably get on Nostr. That's it's a pretty, I think, those are kind of sort of reductive, but I think simple, effective ways to think about it. But
And I agree completely. The one thing I'd say on top of that is the vibes are better on Nostr. Like,
100%.
at least come and check it out. Like, it is incredibly friendly. And I think that something incredible happens when because you can say anything. Nobody can ban you from using Nostr. It's a protocol. It's not a platform. So each of these applications is a platform that is leveraging the protocol. So you can get banned from an app, whatever, but you can't get banned from the protocol. So you can say anything you want, any like disgusting, egregious thing that you want. You can say it there. No one can stop you. But I find that by and large, I mean, you're always going to have a little bit of that, right? There's always people who like to, test the fence, and that's fine. But by and large, that's not what you see on there. You see overwhelming positivity.
Yeah.
It is. When you have the ability to say anything you want, it turns out what you actually trend toward is more positivity, more constructive dialogue, not negativity and destructive dialogue. And additionally, Gigi has a great presentation he gave. It's basically called "You Wouldn't Zap a Car Crash." And the idea is that on centralized social media platforms, on X, Gigi is
he's great.
Brilliant. And he's only on Nostr now, by the way, guys. If you're wondering why you haven't seen Gigi on X in a few years, it's because he deleted it and he's only on Nostr. But it's this idea that, because you can zap people Bitcoin on Nostr, you can give them value when you find something they do valuable. But you don't do that for negative things. You wouldn't zap a car crash. Somebody posts a video of a car crash. I'm not going to zap that Bitcoin. That's tragic and terrible. That's awful. I don't want to zap that. You want to zap positive things. You want to zap constructive things. You want to zap things that provide actual value. On X, on any other centralized platform, the car crash is what gets picked up in the algorithm, because everybody stops to watch a car crash, both on the internet and in real life. But there's a different sort of incentive model when you're dealing with actual value. Likes are free. Bitcoin is very scarce.
Yeah. That's such a good, that's a really good frame. I mean, I had not heard the GG thing before. That is so good. It's kind of hitting me as I'm sitting here, how good that is. Yeah, I think that's probably a good place actually to wrap, because that's such a good pitch for Nostr that you just gave.
You got to watch his. I'll send you his video after.
Yeah,
it's a really great
that's
presentation.
That's just that's like a profound encapsulation of the benefits of Nostr. So let's look, Walker. As far as where people can find you, I don't even know if you need to say it. I mean, I will give you the opportunity to say it, but obviously you run a podcast that everybody should be. If you're not subscribed to it, I don't know what you're doing with your life. But go ahead, and Walker, just tell people where they can find you.
I have a podcast called The Bitcoin Podcast, because there was actually no other podcast called The Bitcoin Podcast when I started mine. So I was like, I'll just take that. You can find me on Nostr, and please do come say hello and tag me, and I'll interact with you, and we can have a good old vibe session on Nostr. But it's if you go to primal.net/Walker, you can find me. If you go to primal.net/Titcoin, you can find the podcast. I live stream the show only to Nostr. but you can find it everywhere else after the fact. If you go to bitcoinpodcast.net or you just search for the Bitcoin Podcast, wherever you watch or listen. I do recommend people check out Fountain if they're not already. It is a Bitcoin. Has Bitcoin Zaps integrated into it and has from the early days. But recently, in like the past year, they integrated Nostr as well. So it's a Nostr client as well. It's all interoperable. You can interact and have this social element to your podcasting experience, which I actually think is really cool. So people should check that out. On X, on the centralized side of things, it's at Walker America, at Titcoin Podcast. I recently did create an Instagram for the podcast too, because I realized that, dear God, that like Instagram is pure normie land. Like it is.
It is, yeah. You're a brave
It's
soul.
rough. I mean, I think it's probably mostly a waste of time. But I was like, well, I'll at least publish some stuff there, some short clips. It's mainly just like crypto people shilling stuff though, like, and then just a bunch of other garbage. But hey, maybe it moves the needle. But I would say just, come say hello on Nostr if you haven't tried it out yet. That's the last message I would leave people with. And yeah, come tag me on Nostr and say you heard about it on this podcast, and I will zap you some sats. So how about that?
Yeah, that sounds great. Do it, everybody. Yeah, Walker, this colloquy of Bitcoin podcasters, I think, was successful. So hopefully people got some value from that. Let's definitely do it again. I'm very grateful to you for all that you do in the space. Thank you for taking some time out of your very, very busy schedule these days to come on and share your wisdom and your thoughts on everything. So I very much appreciate it. And everybody else, we will see you next time.
Thanks for having me, Logan.